Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this council meeting of Tuesday, the 20th of August 2024 at the Nagambie Lakes Regatta Centre. I'm Peter Stevenson, Administrator of Strathbogie Shire Council, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. And hopefully people watching online can hear me. We have had some feedback that we haven't had some great audio, but we're trying our hardest tonight to make sure that that is the case. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play, and we recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we're meeting on the lands of the Tongarong peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. This public meeting is being streamed live via our website and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9.2 of the Local Government Act 2020, and these principles are numbered 1 to 9 on page 2 of the agenda. We welcome the people in our public gallery and also those viewing this meeting through our live stream via our website. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire's governance rules, and if we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we're unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will continue with the meeting given the public gallery is open. If an officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure they have done so, and be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. And we have an apology from Rosemary Scott, Executive Manager, Communications, Engagement and Advocacy. Do we have any more, CEO? No. Okay. And we don't have any disclosures of conflicts of interest. Confirmation of minutes decisions of previous meeting. I'd move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on Tuesday, the 16th of July 2024, including confidential business, are true and correct, and therefore the resolution the recommendation becomes the resolution is thus carried. A short report tonight from me, but we do have a big agenda to get through. I recently had the great privilege of attending a funding announcement with the Honourable Jacqueline Symes MP in her capacity as the member for Northern Victoria in July, and was accompanied by the CEO and some staff members who worked hard to be part of a funding application to get a purpose-built change room facility at the Longwood Recreation Reserve for grant through Sport and Recreation Victoria. Sorry, I should say. They worked hard to get this application in with the local clubs and received $686,825 thanks to $549,460 of the $686,000 project was funded by Sport and Rec Victoria Regional Community Sports Infrastructure Fund. I'll never go off script again. 50,000 and some change came from Longwood Football Netball Club, which is an enormous amount raised by them, and $87,290 came from the council, including in-kind contributions. So total $686,000 or nearly $687,000. And so the Longwood Football and Netball Club, with the support from the Longwood Community Centre Incorporated, who worked tirelessly to help us secure funding for this important community facility, are going to get the facility they want and they need. And I thank them for their commitment and shared vision and for the Minister to come up and make that announcement. And we look forward to, there's an agenda item tonight around that. So we'll talk further about that. We've also had funding announcements for the Safer Together project, and in partnership with Goulburn Valley Library Corporation, funding to extend opening hours for Avenel and Violet Town libraries. Council will receive $300,000 across 2 years for the Leaping into Safer Communities project in partnership with Greater Shepparton City Council, which will support the development of local emergency action plans known as LEAPs across 2 locations in both Strathbogie Shire and Greater Shepparton Council areas. And this will build on similar projects recently completed in Avenel, Euroa and Violet Town, and which are underway in the Gambia and Strathbogie. The LEAPs help community members identify key actions they can take at a local level to be more prepared for the impacts of emergencies, extreme weather events and other disasters. And Council is currently seeking expression of interest for people to join the steering committee for Kerwin's Bridge Local Emergency Action Plan. Expression of interest closed this Friday, the 23rd of August at 5 p.m. And please head to our website for more information. The Victorian Government has announced $48,000 in change through the Living Libraries Infrastructure Program for the Open Libraries Project. And this project will give library members access to Violet Town and Avenel libraries from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. Details of how to access the library will soon be available through Goulburn Valley Regional Library Corporation. And I do thank the Victorian Government for their commitment to these initiatives. Now, I didn't manage to get the skates on, but by all accounts, Winter Wonderland in the Gambia and Avenel has been a resounding success with close to 2,000 people attending. This is another example of government funding and partnerships in action, thanks to funding through the Community Recovery Hub, which is jointly funded by the Australian and Victorian governments through the disaster recovery funding arrangements. Euroa's Winter Wonderland is coming up this weekend, and I encourage everyone to get out and have a go. Your Community, Your Voice campaign has continued to encourage people to consider standing for council at the October election and to ensure they have every opportunity to understand the role, what is required and how to be effective. And since the last meeting, council has hosted the VLGA Becoming a Councillor and VLGA Life as a Woman Councillor sessions. The interim CEO and I have also met with a number of potential candidates through our one-on-one sessions. And for anybody considering standing, I encourage you to reach out if you haven't already, or to visit Council's website, which has a range of information and links to key dates and requirements from the Victoria Electoral Commission. And that's the Strathbogie website /elections. So this is the last council meeting before the election period begins on the 17th of September, when council will officially enter a caretaker period for 6 weeks leading up to the October election. I'd like to take the opportunity now to thank the many community members who have reached out to me since I was appointed administrator late last year. It's not been an easy road with plenty of challenges to work through, but the warm welcome I've received has helped me to understand community needs and helped me to make strategic decisions that represent the best interests of the Shire going forward. Thank you to everyone who has reached out to me during my time at Strathbogie, and thank you to the organisation itself for supporting me with a commitment to open and transparent communication and access to information to help me make informed decisions. I do encourage community members to use their vote wisely. Your vote will shape the future of this municipality and send a clear message about what you expect of your elected representatives. That was a mouthful. Now I'll take a mouthful. Okay, there are public questions tonight, 10 submitters. So our the first questions are from Robin Weatherald of Euroa. You like to read your questions, Robin?
Peter, I haven't got copies of them with me. They were done online, and
okay.
I'd be pleased if you'd.
All right, I'll read them for you verbatim. So Robin says, at the upcoming August council meeting, just tonight, I will request that the administrator provide a comprehensive breakdown of the total cost of the construction work for the new truck wash at Euroa sale yards. This should cover all planning costs, including GVW fees, power supply, upgrades, realignment works, the cost of pre-purchase machinery and pumps, and all other items used in the construction process for the truck wash. Additionally, please include all road alterations, traffic management, and unique design work required in developing the truck wash site, as well as all related machinery hire fees and charges. I expect you to disclose the contract price and all other items related to the site works, their finalisation and completion costs, and if not available, an estimation of any and all other items associated with this truck wash contract and development. Lastly, I am demanding a complete financial breakdown for the entire work program and to the fullest extent possible, a full disclosure of the project cost, total cost. Thank you for your for your question, Robin. The breakdown of the project cost, including the contractor's payment schedule, is commercial in confidence information and will not be disclosed. The contractor's lump sum price is public knowledge, as it was disclosed in the May 2024 council meeting, which was agenda item 11.3.6, and the subsequent resolution with the total lump sum price of $642,995.85, which included GST. In regards to the previous expenditure related to the project, I can advise that a total of $91,000, excluding GST, has been spent on the project in previous years, purchasing pump, performing detailed designs and preparing the site for construction of the truck wash. Robin's second question is, please supply a copy of each year's financial reports, specifically the balance sheet period each year, 2016 to 2024, attempting to understand the accumulated surpluses, commitments, and then unspent funds. Fortunately, over time, changes have occurred, system change and reporting standard changes, different accounting standards. Boils down to only 1, financial balance sheet, 2, declared surplus deficit, 3, explanation of surplus, 4, changes to equity, 5, accumulated surplus changes each year. Again, thank you, Robin. Financial statements from 2014-15 to 2022 to 23 are available on our website for public access, and detailed tables and financial reports provide
Quite hard to access.
right answers to question 1 to 5 above. They are on the website.
Hard to access.
Well, perhaps you can get some assistance to access them,
I
Robin.
appreciate that, Peter.
Submitted to Liza Jane Lyons. Is Liza here? Liza here? No? No. Okay. So, given we haven't adopted the updated governance rules yet, the change that required people to actually be here to ask questions or be online is not hasn't been introduced until such time as the governance rules change. So I'm happy to read the question from Liza Jane Lyons, but from should that particular item that's in the agenda later be passed or the governance rules change, that won't be happening in the future, unless a future council changes that. Okay, the question is, for permit application P 2023-128, a buffer of 40 metres has been proposed to the north and east. Whilst there is existing vegetation to the west, it would appear that the proposal includes no formal buffer requirement to the west. Why is there no buffer to the west that is required to be met, which is the closest boundary to our property, in the event the existing vegetation is reduced or removed over time? And thank you for your question. In response to that question, the closest proposed building will be located approximately 150 metres from the western boundary. Officers have deemed this is an acceptable buffer from surrounding land uses to the west. A landscape plan is also required as part of the conditions forming part of the recommendation should the recommendation be supported by council. This condition will ensure that adequate landscaping is planted and retained along all property boundaries. Submitters 3, and it's David Maddox, and David Maddox of Shoreham. He's asked 2 questions. He's asked that they be read out on his behalf. Is that correct, David?
Correct.
First question, application P 2023-128 identifies the referral authority GBCMA, which stated in its review of 2.8224 that GBCMA does not currently possess new information about flood levels in the vicinity of the development. Therefore, why would a permit be issued without the post-October 2022 flood data? I'll also read David's second question at this point because they're similar in nature, so I'll provide a response to the jointly to them. The second question is application P 2023-128 should be compliant with the Strathbogie Planning Scheme Clause 44.03 floodway overlay. Page 43 of the agenda with item 11.1.3 states an update is required as stipulated by the Planning Minister. There's been no update, therefore shouldn't the application be deferred? In response, thank you, David, for your questions. The response to both is officers are required to make a recommendation based on the best current data available to them and the relevant experts, in this case, the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority, GBCMA. The application was referred to the GBCMA, who have provided conditional consent to the application, and officers have taken this into account as part of their assessment. Submitter 4 has not indicated if he'd be in would be in the gallery or not. Des Mason from Kerwins Bridge. He is here. So would you like to read your questions, Des, or would you like me? Like me to do it?
Happy for you to.
Okay, righto, Des. So planning permit application P 2023-128 is a modified application for a caravan and camping park previously identified as P 2020-124. This previous application was rejected unanimously by the elected council of the time and rejected by VCAT. Is it appropriate that council and the community should bear the cost of a potential revisit to VCAT? Thank you for your question. Des, the Planning and Environment Act 1987 requires that officers undertake an assessment on all planning applications, permit applications submitted. As part of this assessment, a decision on the application needs to be made. Both applicants and objectors have the ability to challenge any decision made by council or council officers at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and this part of the process is outside the control of the council. Des also submits the following question. With regard to the new independent community representative for the Audit and Risk Committee, what connection or direct involvement does Mr. Tanner have now or previously, specifically with the Strathbogie Shire? I note the conflict of interest statement in the pack, but for good order also, does Mr. Tanner have any prior connection or relationship with any member of the evaluation panel or the current CEO? Thank you, Des, for your question. Mr. Tanner resides in the region. In terms of prior connections, I've met him a handful of times. He was an administrator at Moira in an overlap period while I've been here. We've met at a couple of local government things, and one of those has been a library board meeting. But other than that, never knew him from Adam when I came here. We don't socialise, we're not friends, and he happened to be an applicant. I don't know that there are any other connections at all with the CEO or anybody else involved. So we just have met. So that's 4, submitter 4, submitter 5. Darren Lyons from Kerwins Bridge. Darren, you like to read your questions?
Through you, Chair.
All right, you're happy for me to read? Okay. So Darren's first question is planning permit application P 2023-128 relies on the subdivision of one site into two lots, which will both be less than 40 hectares each. And the application also relies on conversion of agricultural land into primarily an accommodation facility. Given that the Strathbogie planning scheme protects the farming zone and its purpose, and the land in question has been previously identified in a submission to VCAT by the Shire as having strategic importance, why is it appropriate for the application to be accepted when it is contrary to the farming zone importance and also contrary to prior statements made by the Shire in writing to VCAT? Thank you for your question, Darren. Both the proposed subdivision and proposed land uses are permissible in the farming zone. A detailed assessment of the requirements of the farming zone and the officer's reasons for deeming the subdivision is provided in attachment 1 planning officer report to item 11.1.1 of tonight's agenda. Planning permit application, this is the second question. Planning permit application P 2023-128 in the context of the Strathbogie planning scheme would be considered an out of centre development due to its location away from the Nagambie township. Given that such an application should be cited elsewhere, then why is it appropriate for the application to be accepted? And thanks again, Darren, for this question. A detailed assessment of the application, including its proposed location, has been provided in attachment 1 planning officer report to item 11.1.1 of tonight's agenda. And that report details the reason as to why officers believe the subject site is a suitable location for the proposed land use and development. And of course, this matter is now before council for consideration this evening. Jackie Anton, you'd like me? Yep. Okay. Thanks, Jackie. Jackie Anton from Goulburn Weir has 2 questions. Her first question is, in the agenda for the council meeting and the consideration of planning permit application P 2023-128, there are 88 permit conditions identified. Given the limited human and financial resources of the Strathbogie Shire Council, is it likely that the Shire will not be able to allocate the human resources necessary to ensure compliance with all the permit conditions? Thank you for that question, Jackie. Council officers do have an obligation under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to ensure compliance with planning permit conditions. Should a planning permit be granted and the proposals proceed, officers intend to work closely with the applicant and other relevant parties such as Goulburn Murray Water and the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority to ensure compliance with the conditions of the planning permit. And I'm sure there'd be people in the community ready to let council know should
Sure.
word adhered.
For sure. I'll be on them every day.
Jackie's second question is, the planning permit application P 2023-128 is by its nature very critical to the community. In that case, should the decision about the permit be deferred until such time that there are elected councillors that have the role of representing the community? Thank you, Jackie, for your second question. Council has an obligation to accept, assess and make decisions on planning permit applications under the Planning and Environment Act. There is no ability to defer this decision-making responsibility as the application is ready for a decision by council. And I'd add that if it was deferred, then it would give an automatic trigger to the developers to go to VCAT. And I have some experience in this where things that, well, conditions that council might have asked for were not then put on when it's gone to VCAT. So this is the best chance. It's going to a council meeting is the best chance to get the conditions on there, because it go to VCAT, they could ask it to go to VCAT, and some of those things might drop off because it's a new ball game. But anyway, I'm here as the must be done tonight. So, submitter number 7, again, is in the gallery, but would like the question to be read out, and that's Mel Arnold. I just checked that. Hey, Mel. So Mel's submitted 2 questions, and I should say Mel's from Kerwin Bridge. The first question is P 2023-12882 at Kerwins Bridge. Nature Advisory Report dated July 2024, item 6.3.5 listed fauna species Brolga. Nature positive measure. Build a shallow 30 to 50 centimetre but large dam in an area not to be developed.
That's what they recommended.
Please advise where this large dam is to be sited in the proposal. And the response is, well, thank you for the question, but the response is, should a planning permit be issued, then this requirement will need to be met. Condition 10 in the recommendation will ensure this to be met. I can't tell you where it's to be sited at the moment. Mel's second question, P 2023-128 is planned to have a 50-metre buffer to the eastern backwater. Box Grove Development DP03 has been approved with a 60-metre buffer to the eastern backwater, which is the same body of water. Why is the buffer not the same as the Box Grove Development? And again, thank you, Mel, for your question. The requirement for a 60-metre buffer for Box Grove is a specific requirement for that site that was included as part of a planning permit amendment which saw the rezoning of the land to low density residential. Office is satisfied that a 50-metre buffer is acceptable in the instance of the camping and caravan park site based on a detailed assessment of the application, including taking into consideration the previous VCAT decision for the land and the requirements of Goulburn Murray Valley water. Goulburn Murray water, I should say. Our next submitter, again, is in the gallery, and that's Bob Arnold, and he'd like his question read out. Yeah. So, Bob from Kerwins Bridge. There's two questions. Planning application P 2023-128, 82 Kerwins Bridge Road, Kerwins Bridge 3068. The biosis report dated July 29, 2024 identified calls for the assessment and impacts of native vegetation and fauna habitat. I think that meant to be habitat. Will this assessment be completed prior to the issue of the permit? And Bob's second question is the same place, same report, identified calls for a survey of threatened flora and fauna species. Will this survey be completed prior to the issue of the permit? And again, thank you for your questions, Bob. The biosis report recommended the following be undertaken and included as planning permit conditions. So a hydrological assessment to confirm no direct impacts or no indirect impacts on flora and fauna habitat, and targeted surveys for the Sloane's froglet and also for some species of vegetation. And officers understand that the planning permit applicant is in the process of engaging someone to have these studies undertaken. And the requirements to have these studies undertaken has been included as planning permit conditions in the recommendation. And submitter number 9 from the Kerwins Bridge Community Group, I understand. And David Maddox, part of these questions to you. Number 9, the Kerwins Bridge Community Group. Couple of questions here.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, would you like me to read them?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, both questions are in relation to the rural residential land use strategy and urban growth strategy. The first question is clause 11.1.3 of the RRLUS and the UGS provides sustainability considerations. Consideration be given to enhancing and expanding the natural environment. And thank you for your questions, or the first question. The short answer is yes, council is required to give consideration to the environment during the development of the two strategies. For the strategies to consider land for residential or rural residential or any commercial or industrial growth, the state government requires significant consideration of any impacts on the natural environment from council. Bushfire and flooding are the most predominant issues for consideration to be given to in all planning schemes across the state. And flow-on effect is placing more emphasis on the consideration of growth in the direction of areas with an elevated risk of flood or fire, for example, bushland and waterways, before doing so. So council will undertake the development of these strategies with the involvement from the Tongarong Land and Water Council, the Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Action, the CFA, GBCMA, the EPA, Goulburn Murray Water, to name a few of the relevant authorities that have a direct interest with the environment in the planning space. This provides a chance for the aforementioned authorities to prize out any show-stopping issues before too much time and effort are invested. And the second question is, Clause 11.1.3 of the RLUS and the UGS provides sustainability considerations, but leads to the following questions. Will a detailed housing supply demand analysis be undertaken to yield a foundation for the strategies? Thanks again for the question. Yes, a supply and demand assessment, also referred to as a background report, has been completed for the two strategies. The supply and demand assessments have provided a foundation for the preparation of the issues and opportunities reports and for the final strategies. The information gathered from the analysis will form the basis and justification to state government future strategic work that Council will undertake. The supply and demand reports provide a clear background of the historical growth of the municipality and provide for future population modelling into the next few decades. These considerations will be utilised in the form of the UGS and RRLUS final strategies, but also the more specific recommendations of the township strategies for Avenel, Euroa, Nagambie and Violent Town, such as rezonings. Our next submitter is Eleanor Miller from Nagambie, and Eleanor asked two questions. And the first question, well, is Eleanor here? So the first question, excuse me. In the past, when the number of candidates does not exceed the number of vacancies in local government elections, the returning officer simply declared the nominees elected and there is no ballot or poll. Under the relevant provisions of the Local Government Act, this is still the case today. And thank you, Eleanor, for your question. If after nominations close, the number of candidates is the same as the number of vacancies, those candidates are elected without the need for a vote. This is called being elected unopposed. If nobody nominates as a candidate, no voting takes place and another election is held as soon as possible. For local council elections, if there are fewer candidates than vacancies, the candidates who nominated are declared elected. A by-election is held for the remaining vacancies. Eleanor's second question is, in the case of councillors dismissed by the Minister for Local Government after sustained periods of inappropriate behaviour, are these people permitted to re-nominate for the same council in upcoming elections, or are they disqualified for a period? The answer to that question, yes, they are able to re-nominate, and the Victorian Electoral Commission manages the nomination process and will determine eligibility for all prospective candidates. But that said, it's worth having a look. The Google search for potential changes. Well, have they gone through the Parliament, the changes to the Act? Local government reform?
Bits of it has been not completely.
Not completely.
Changes.
Yeah. So there are changes happening which will give Minister powers about carving out individuals who might play up, but
That's after election.
but that'll be after this, after this election. So the response that I've given is what's going to apply to this election. Okay. Haven't missed anybody? All right. That's the questions. Now we're moving to the report. And hopefully, just excuse me while I log in again. It never got that lazy on me. Never happened before. It's all that talking, yeah. Just put it to sleep. Okay. Just bear with me while I catch up. There we go. So, right. So we're on item 11.1.1 now. Planning permit application P 2023-128. and it's the one we're all talking about. The use and development of the land for a camping and caravan park, restaurant and place of assembly, brackets function centre, a 2-lot subdivision, creation of an easement and removal of native vegetation at 82 Kerwins Bridge Road and Lot 2, TP 878622C, Nagambie. Manager Aiken, may we have a summary of this report, please, and acknowledging that it is a big report. Just give us some key.
It's brief as I can. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval of planning permit application P 2023-128. The application proposes a use and development of land for a camping and caravan park, including standard amenities, 80 prefabricated glamping style tent units. The land contains an existing building that has been used as a restaurant and function centre, and approval is also sought to continue this use as part of the planning permit application. As part of the camping and caravan park, it's proposed to construct 2 jetties on Goulburn Murray Water land to provide access to the eastern backwater. The applicant is proposing to restrict the use of these jetties to guests only. The jetties are proposed to be used for kayaking only. Consent to seek approval for the jetties has been obtained from Goulburn Murray Water. The application also seeks approval of a small amount of native vegetation, including 1 small scattered tree and some small patches of understory and wetland vegetation to allow for the construction of the jetties. Finally, the application seeks approval of a 2-lot subdivision to separate the balance of the land and an existing caretaker's dwelling from the camping and caravan park and the restaurant and function centre. The application was notified to adjacent and nearby property owners and occupiers on the council website, the Euroa Gazette and the Nagambie Community Voice. 37 objections were received. The grounds of objection included several key planning considerations, including potential environmental impacts on the eastern backwater and its associated flora and fauna, as well as a potential loss of productive farmland. One additional objection was received after the publishing of this agenda. However, no new grounds of objection were raised. The proposal was referred to the relevant referral authorities, including Council's Environmental Health Officer and Engineering Department. There were no objections to the proposal from the referral authorities or any of the internal referral departments, and conditional consent was provided by all, aside from AusNet Power, who did not respond. Officers have undertaken an assessment of the application against the relevant provisions of the Strathbogie planning scheme. Officers find that while the application will lead to the loss of some agricultural land, officers believe that on balance it will provide for an acceptable planning outcome, given the siting of the proposal, including the provision of suitable buffers from surrounding land uses and the context of the surrounding area. Through the inclusion of conditions in the recommendations forming part of this report, officers are satisfied that any potential environmental impacts, including impacts on flora and fauna, can be suitably managed. In conclusion, an assessment of the application against the relevant planning considerations weighs in favour of support for this proposal, and the recommendation begins on page 12 for your consideration, Mr Chair.
Thanks, Manager Aiken. Just a couple of questions. Submitter 8 asked the question around the hydrology biopsis assessment, biopsis report and the hydrology assessment, targeted surveys and so on. I've dealt with a lot of planning things in my past, but never had to deal with those things. But is it usual for those to come into a condition?
For something of this nature, one of the key considerations was making sure that any potential impact on that backwater and its flora and fauna could be suitably managed. So, officers gave great consideration to that. The application provided a flora and fauna assessment. We had that peer reviewed by an expert. They came back and suggested that some additional work needed to be done, which was done. We sent that back to them for review and they were satisfied, subject to a number of things being done, including an updated report, that was fine. They then suggested some conditions that could go on to any planning permit subject to approval, requiring targeted surveys for vegetation and flora and fauna, just to determine whether they're present. The main reason is that they require separate approvals under other legislation. And the other one was a hydrological assessment, just to make sure there were no indirect impacts on flora and fauna on the backwater. So I did quiz Biosis about whether or not that should be done prior to a decision being made, but they were adamant that was low risk. It was more just following legislation and ticking off everything. So officers in that instance were comfortable.
Okay. And I guess just as a follow-up then, if they were made to do those things and it got knocked over, then, I guess it's probably an investment in something that, well, yeah.
Your bias was
Wasn't
that
before the
it's very highly unlikely that those surveys or that assessment would turn up that the development's not feasible there because of its environmental impacts. It was just making sure all other separate approvals and things are followed. Yep.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I won't ask any further questions at this point. Now, we do have a number of submitters this evening who wish to speak to this item. And we're going to give each, well, our rules say, or not me, the rules say we give each of you 5 minutes then. And our first submitter is Bob Arnold. So please take, yeah. You'll be better heard there, Bob.
I'll be heard.
You're under the,
I'll be heard all right, Mr. Chair.
good on you. Over to you.
I have lived in Kerwins Bridge for over 15 years. Over that time, I have personally identified 134 different species of birds. 11 of these are either on the endangered or threatened list. All of these sightings have been either on the eastern backwater or on the surrounding land. Many other wildlife species also make the area home, including the threatened platypus, just to mention one. How unique to have such an abundance of wildlife near Nagambie. Why are we so lucky to have so many species here? Well, the eastern backwater was established 135 years ago when the Golden Wheel was completed. The backwater is isolated, currently well away from all human activity, where wildlife can take refuge, feed and breed without any interference. Every requirement for wildlife to thrive is present in this sensitive wetland and surrounds. In drought years and years of below rainfall, as other wetlands in this district dry up, the backwaters of the Goulburn River are an essential home for survival of many precious species. Nature Advisory Report dated July 2024 this year, I consider that the report is deficient and contains many errors. The report states that the site visit was conducted during an inappropriate month and only a short duration. In my opinion, surveys such as this need to be properly assessed over peak wildlife breeding seasons and certainly not when the site visit occurred. The survey was totally inadequate as no assessment was completed from the wetland, only completed from the shoreline. VCAT members noted this failure at the hearing for the previous rejected application. The report states fauna species may be impacted during nesting season due to disturbance by kayaking. The report fails to mention powerboats or jet skis that will inevitably be introduced to the backwater. From visitors to the tourist park, visitors to the park will be able to launch vessels at the nearby Turner Island boat ramp and venture into the backwater. The report mentions there is no records of the threatened white-bellied sea eagle nesting on the wetland. At the hearing for the previous proposal, VCAT members accepted the evidence platypus, as those that are unfortunate enough to venture into the river proper become a food source for the large Murray cod. For over 15 years, I have witnessed a permanent flock of brolga continually living in and around the backwater, eastern backwater. The Nature Advisory Report recommends the need for a no-go zone of 300 metres for nesting habitat for the months of June to December each year. However, the establishment of the no-go zone is dependent on the results of 4 monthly surveys for the months of August to November only. That number of surveys is totally inadequate and will be a complete failure to identify nesting habitat. My only hope is that the brolgas prepare to nest on the 4 days of the surveys and not on any other of the 210 days of their nesting period. I'm aware that the brolgas are bright, but not sure they are so accommodating. That 4-day survey recommendation is a complete failure to anybody that cares for the environment. My question, does the Shire have the resources and willingness to properly monitor any of this wetland no-go zone? From the inevitable introduction of powerboats, jet skis and other watercraft to adequately protect this sensitive environment, there needs to be a constant daily supervision for all the 214 days of the nesting season. Otherwise, the outcome will be a devastating failure. Mr. Stevenson, I consider you have a very clear choice to make this evening. It's either the tourist park with its water body playground or the retention of our very precious ecological communities of our backwater. In my opinion, it is one or the other. If the tourist park proceeds, the wetland eventually will be converted to another Lake Ngambie and suffer the ever-increasing water behavioural problems that body of water now suffers. Why put this sensitive environment, important wetland at risk when there are so many better sites for tourist parks? Please agree with us that the eastern backwater is an environmental gem and far important to lose. Thank you for that, Speed.
Thanks for that, Bill. It's a minute, Mel Arnold. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you. I'd like to add my objections to the proposal of a camping park at the eastern backwater. I'm not against tourist parks in general, but I strongly feel that the area proposed for this camping park is totally inappropriate. The main reasons for my objection are my concern about the environment and also the unsuitability of the site for people and families who enjoy camping parks. I think everyone acknowledges that we are in the midst of climate change and the terrible impacts many areas of the world and Australia are suffering. Ngambie's recent flooding is but a small example of what is in store if we don't address climate change. The government releases a comprehensive State of the Environment report every 5 years. The most recent one states that Australia's environment is generally deteriorating, that climate change threatens every ecosystem and will have a profound impact on the environment and human society. As part of that, land usage, habitat fragmentation and degradation are part of the main pressures facing our environment. Recently, our governments have been spending millions of dollars on re-establishing wetlands, such as at Winton and the Grampians. We already have a wonderful eastern wetland here in the eastern backwater. The small Coburns Bridge community and visitors truly appreciate this wonderful area and marvel at the flock of brolgers and other birds and animals that use this habitat. In fact, I photographed 6 beautiful brolgers on the proposed site this morning. The applicant's consultant nature advisory report dated July this year recommends a nature positive measure that the shallow 30-50 centimetre large dam be constructed for the use of wildlife, which we're not sure yet, are we, where that is, Mr. Stevens, is that right? No brolga will ever use that dam, as they will not venture anywhere near human activity or building structures, as you may have noticed, Mr. Stevenson, when you visited the site. Please consider how this proposal will affect the eastern backwater. Maintaining a healthy, diverse ecosystem should be a priority for the benefit of our environment. People and families attracted to camping parks enjoy a very physical relationship with water. They come to camping parks with trailers carrying many different kinds of watercraft, jet skis, and all the relevant equipment for family members to enjoy while on the water. Campers to this proposed area will be very disappointed to find the stump-filled backwater unsuitable for their watercraft and the activities they enjoy. The Goulburn Murray water warning signs will alert them to the presence of acute blue-green algae in the water, and this will add to their disappointment. The Goulburn River is 500 metres away. Access to a boat ramp and the river is through the narrow, degraded Turner's Lane and the crumbling boat ramp at Picnic Point. The impact of a possible 80 extra watercraft trailers in the Picnic Point area without any amenities will result in the inevitable accumulation of litter, noise, trampling of the riparian zone to the detriment of the environment and the local residents. In the environmental plans and policies of Strathbogie Shire, it states that the Shire will continue to assist in the protection and enhancement of the natural environment into the future. I appeal to you to take this opportunity to preserve and safeguard this valuable asset and in doing so, aid the biodiversity and ecosystems so important to the health of our environment. Please reject this application. Thank you.
Our third submitter is David Maddox. David?
Steve, before you start the clock, please. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present this meeting. And I will just add, I've had an association with the Kerwins Bridge area, but more so with the Ngambie, the Goulburn River, the eastern backwater for over 60 years. Goes back to the days of my grandfather, and the association is long, and like other people here, we care about the environment. I just wanted to add that. So thank you. I'd like to present this information. So the VCAT orders from the previous camping and caravan park application highlighted the shortcomings. The quotations I use are directly from the VCAT orders of December 21. Item 1, VCAT stated, we were, however, not provided with sufficient evidence for us to conclude there is an overriding net benefit to the community. I comment, there is no added benefit with the new application. In fact, the reduced scale of the business by more than 50% to 80 permanent tents means less socio-economic benefit to the town's businesses and less employment opportunity during construction and ongoing operation. Item 2, VCAT stated, we find that the proposal is not set back sufficiently from the eastern backwater and there has been a lack of consideration of cumulative environmental effects. My comment, although excellent that the riparian zone has been reset to 50 metres, but the key word to the VCAT comment is cumulative impact. With 400 plus people on the site and with their natural attraction to the water, the end result is the riparian zone is being trampled to the point where there is no habitat and the fauna will disappear. Point 3, VCAT stated, the impacts and mitigation measures need to be clearly identified prior to issuing a permit. I comment, the updated flora and fauna assessment by the applicant and the peer review by the Shire's consultant has gone a long way to identify what needs to be done. But in spite of a range of conditions that are put forward, the threat to the fauna will not disappear and the bird species will go away. They will not cope with the people, the noise, the lighting, the vehicles and the watercraft. Point 4, VCAT stated the flood overlay extent is greater than the PPRZ and the extent of actual flooding even greater again. I comment this VCAT statement was made prior to the October 22 flood. VCAT was aware of the flooding issue and yet it has not been updated by the Catchment Management Authority. The CMA states it will do updates and yet is relying on data of 2015 and 2017 for its conditional consent. The Shire has a responsibility to get updated data on the subject site before any issue of a permit. Now, VCAT stated that items 5, patrons would be able to use the lake ramps, meaning Lake Ngambie, or alternatively the informal facilities at the end of Turner Island Lane, which was in a state of disrepair on our inspection. We consider that increased use of this informal facility would potentially be a worse outcome for the neighbours and for the environment. My comment is the status of Turner Island Lane and its informal facilities have not changed in any way and is not addressed by any of the permit conditions. Of these 5 items alone, VCAT expressed its reasons behind no permit approval. Fundamentally, these issues remain. There is the basic approach taken within the assessment of the planning application that the potential environmental impacts can be controlled by way of set conditions. I consider that this is flawed. The conditions and mitigation measures will not automatically be adhered to by the applicant, and the Shire will not have the resources to monitor those conditions and mitigation measures. The riparian zone vegetation measure will not protect the sensitive eastern backwater and its surrounds. The referral authorities have provided conditional consents. They will not monitor those conditions. Will the flora and fauna assessments and conditions be sufficient to protect the endangered and threatened species and all other species in the environment? No. As opposed to relying on pre-October 22 flooding, will the flood levels be established in the future by the CMA have an impact on the proposal? Yes. Will the current stormwater management strategy cope with the added rainfall associated with climate change? No. These are not rhetorical questions, but the application does not give the answers. There is speculation within the permit conditions that certain things will be done or not done. Speculated conditions do not add weight to the assessment by Shire planning. I believe a permit should not be granted. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. David, I should say.
Right after those, but I'll give it a go. Before I start, I just wanted to thank the planning department for their engagement during this process. Through you, Chair, the applicant's starting position, and unfortunately the planner's recommendation follows this also, is that this application is only for 80 cabins now, and that this must be better than the 117 and 153 camping sites which was sought last time. This is not an appropriate starting premise at all, in my view, so I'm asking you to pause and reflect on three things. Number one, what's the history here and how have we got where we are today with the proposed development activity on this site? Number two, please consider the current status of the Strathbogie Shire Council. And three, most importantly, whether you have the appropriate information to make a fully informed decision. So let me provide more detail for you on those three things. This application is a significant high-density out-of-town development that has already been rejected unanimously by our previously elected council members. The decision was reaffirmed by VCAT at significant cost to both council and the community. Whilst this latest application puts forward changes, and that's acknowledged, the primary reasons as to why this application was unanimously rejected by our previous council have not changed. As a reminder, they were: A, it's removing agricultural land which was identified as having strategic importance. B, the proposed subdivision will lead to fragmentation of agricultural land which is identified as having strategic importance. C, the permit application is not in accordance with the Nagambie Growth Management Plan 2020, and the location of such a use and development would be more appropriate closer to Nagambie. The reasons which the Shire has provided previously to the applicant and also to VCAT, I might add, to reject the permit have not changed. And I've just read those to you verbatim. This is where I think your considerations should start. In addition to this, there are three important and related matters. The first one is we have an election that is only a few weeks away. These new councillors, who will replace one person appointed by the minister, will be newly empowered by the community to set the strategic agenda longer term for the Shire, which will importantly include decisions that form part of this application. The second one, there are two important strategic framework documents, the Rural Residential and Land Use Strategy and the Urban Growth Strategy, that are being progressed by the Shire and are due to be finalised also later this year. These two documents you do not have, and they will likely much more clearly guide appropriate locations for developments such as these within the Shire boundaries. And third, and most importantly, and the critical issue I want to finish with is this: the Goulburn Broken CMA has confirmed in writing that their floodplain data is materially out of date. It's actually from 2015 and 2017. But also, as a result of the flood event in October 2022, the CMA are undertaking floodplain analysis, which will be available to the Shire later this year. I understand the advice from the CMA to the Shire planners is that it can only rely on the most recently available information when assessing development proposals. but the Shire's own responsibilities under the planning scheme, as you know, are very clear. The Shire cannot and should not defer the flood assessment responsibility to someone else. You also have objectors who have long-standing community landholders that have provided evidence, written and photographic, to the Shire planners that show this site was severely impacted by flooding in October 2022. VCAT raised the issue of flooding at this site as a matter of concern also. Administrator, please remember that properties more at risk of flooding inevitably become a cost to the Shire, and if we can, we should avoid that. And so in summary, you're being asked to make a decision on out-of-date information that's critical to you making an informed decision, and a permit should not issue until you have all of this. You are therefore left with no option but to refuse the permit.
Thanks. And we have some online submitters, I understand. Greg Mather. Oh, we haven't got Greg. We've got Sam Hockley from Tompkinson. Yeah. Okay. G'day, Sam. I can hardly see you, but hello.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Great.
Very good. My name is Samuel Hockley. I am the planner that prepared and lodged the planning permit application for the use and development of the land for a camping and caravan park at 82 Kerwins Bridge Road. The design for the proposal has taken into account the previous VCAT decision to uphold the refusal of the planning permit application that preceded this application. We feel that the proposed design has addressed each of the concerns that were raised in that 2022 VCAT decision. The previous VCAT decision outlined the subject site was deemed appropriate for commercial purposes due to the location of the existing function centre on the land, while declaring that the application was an overdevelopment of the site and adversely impacted on the local environment. The proposal under this application has been redesigned from scratch to reduce the overall size of the development and to minimise its effect on the environment by removing the boat ramp, reducing the number and density of units, and increasing the setbacks to the lake edge. As part of the application, a detailed ecological and native vegetation assessment was undertaken that has been peer reviewed and approved by Council's independent third-party experts and the Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Action. The original application impacted on 1.06 hectares of native vegetation, while the proposal now affects only 0.144 hectares and does not require the removal of any large trees. The proposal also includes the planting of vegetation buffers along the eastern and northern boundaries, in addition to internal revegetation in accordance with the submitted landscape plan. Appropriate measures have been identified in the ecological assessment to further reduce effects on local fauna. These include preventing access to the backwater outside of the jetty areas, restricting kayaking from June to December, and preventing access to backwater islands. A swimming pool is proposed to cater for swimming instead of the backwater, which often contains algal blooms, further mitigating disturbance to local fauna. As part of future work, detailed fauna surveys and hydrological assessment are being prepared to mitigate impacts on the environment during the construction phase. The reduction in the scale of the use and development ensures that impacts to the backwater and riparian zone are now negligible. Formerly sealed roads have been replaced by a smaller number of granitic sand pathways to minimise stormwater runoff, and the roofed area of the development has been drastically reduced. As part of the planning assessment, written consent from Goldman Murray Water was obtained for the two proposed jetties on the backwater. The location of these jetties has been chosen to minimise native vegetation loss and do not require the removal of any large trees. A detailed stormwater management plan was prepared that allows for the detention of all stormwater runoff from the proposed development and the treatment of that water to pre-development levels before being discharged. The stormwater management plan has taken climate change models into account. In addition to mitigating the effects to the natural environment, the proposal will provide some economic benefits to the area. The previous VCAT decision noted that the camping and caravan park is likely to provide a measure of socio-economic benefit to the township's businesses, some employment opportunities during construction, and its ongoing operation will service the township's tourist activities and events. The new proposal before you will similarly provide for economic benefits that will filter through the community through increased tourism to the area and ongoing employment. Every effort has been made to redesign and reduce the impact of the proposal to address the concerns of the previous council and VCAT decision. The main concern regarding impacts to the backwater, flora and fauna have all been addressed in this new proposal by greatly reducing the size, scale, and type of development. We feel the proposal should be supported by council given this thorough redesign. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And unless Greg Maver has arrived online, we don't have any more submitters. Well, thanks to everyone who submitted. I want to echo the thanks to the planning team who actually had this is a big chunk of their work, I would imagine, for a period of time. And you've had to deal with it a lot longer than I have. I want to thank the people of Kerwin's Bridge and the objectors who provided an opportunity for myself and to go with Braden and to actually contextualise some of the objectives or some of the objections that were put up, so for better understanding. And I want to thank the proponents for allowing us to go on their site too and have a look at the function centre and actually have a look at wander around the place and see what be able to locate the plans on the site. Apologies to Bob that I didn't get on the boat, but I'm not drowning for anyone. Right? I said to you before, I don't have skin in this game. Not enough to drown. Anyway, the only skin in the game I have is to try and make an appropriate decision within the scope of my authority. And I know it's been said, I should leave it until the next council's elected, but I can't do that. That'd be an abrogation of my responsibility, and I might as well unplug the battery of the computer now, hand it over and go home. I find it hard because I'd have to give the card back, but that would really be the only option to me. If I didn't make a decision tonight, it'd be go home because I'm not doing the job that I've been appointed for. I understand too the questions about, should we have the flood work done and should we have those other planning strategies done? Be lovely to have them, but they're not done. And so we can't hold up whether it's this development or this application or the application for a single dwelling on a block smaller than 300 square metres or any other development that requires there's a trigger for a planning permit. We can't just hold them off because we haven't done the work. What we've got to do is make best use of what we have. We can't make too many assumptions because they'll just get chucked back at us and thrown at us and we won't get anywhere. I'm not unsympathetic to the objectors, and well, there are a lot of things to consider. A lot of points made by quite a number of people. I'm not an expert. I've made probably in my councillor days. I was on the planning committee for nearly a decade, and that was a big urban council. We made probably, I don't know, 20 a month, I should say. Now over 10 years, 9 or 10 years, that's a lot of decisions. I've never seen one as complicated as this, I've got to say. But I will say this. One of the things that guided me in my decision making as a councillor in planning matters, and is guiding me here. If the recommendation from the officers was no, this ain't good, this shouldn't go anywhere, then I probably wouldn't second guess that, because I'm not the expert. I have to rely on the information that's provided to me. That said, I'm satisfied that the work that the planning team have done to come up with this recommendation is good work, and it satisfies me that I have no other option but to move that the recommendation in all of its conditions, the 80-something conditions on pages. What pages were they? Let me have a look.
Page 12.
12 onwards, let's say. I believe, I'm going to move that the recommendation is supported and thus carried. And of course, the objectors have their rights to seek a review at the appropriate place, which is VCAT. If anyone wants to leave after that decision, might just let people do that. We get into the rest. Okay. All right, moving on to planning application 11.1.2, native vegetation removal, NVR 2024-001, associated with road sealing project by Council Weir Road, Ballaston. And again, Manager Aiken, can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application seeks approval for the removal of native vegetation along Weir Road, Ballaston. The vegetation removal is required to facilitate road upgrade works that will improve the safety of Weir Road for road users. The upgrade works are to be undertaken on behalf of Council and include road widening, regrading, lengthening of existing culverts, safety barriers and application of road sealing. Given there has been significant public interest in the road upgrade works and that the application for native vegetation removal has been made by Council, the matter is being referred to Council in accordance with Council's S6 instrument of delegation, members of staff and Council's planning permit applications referral to Council policy. It's important to note that this Council report only considers the proposed native vegetation removal. No planning permit approval is required for the proposed road upgrade works and therefore they do not form part of the officer's assessment or recommendation. The vegetation that is proposed to be removed is located between the Weir Road intersection with Ngambie Rushworth Road and the Weir Road intersection with Hudson Road, Richards Road and Reedy Lake Road. It's proposed to remove 36 trees, 9 of which have been determined to be large trees, included in an area of 0.15 hectares within this road reserve. The required documentation has been sent to the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, or DECA, who have provided consent to the application subject to permit conditions. Despite being over 800 trees located in proximity to the road upgrade works, the road upgrade design has minimised the extent of native vegetation removal to the absolute extent necessary, while still ensuring that road function, including drainage and safety, can be provided. The application has been notified by way of letters to nearby property owners and occupiers in the local paper and on Council's website. One objection has been received. Officers have undertaken an assessment of the application against the relevant provisions of the Strathbogie planning scheme and in conjunction with the professional views of DECA regarding the vegetation removal. In conclusion, an assessment of the application against the relevant planning considerations weighs in favour of support for this proposal, and the recommendation begins on page 36 for your consideration, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Aiken. just bear with me while I try and find where I've got this. Sure. That's it. Yeah, the recommendations on page. Thanks, James. Page 6. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yours doesn't scroll
No.
like that. No. Yeah.
Scrolls with buttons.
Yes. Yes. Apologies there. Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was important that this road get fixed, and the only way we could, and particularly I say that because, and I know people will appreciate, with Kerwin's bridge out of action, Weir Road needed to be upgraded, and I think there was something like 300 trees proposed, or 200 trees at risk, if you like, but the proposal is reduce that to 6. Sorry,
36.
36, and only a handful of those were significant trees. Yeah. In the interest of not tearing down trees, just to digress, I didn't get a copy printed off of this agenda because it was too damn big, and so
It's newspaper, you like mine?
that's all right. It's all right, Tom. But I should have gone. I shouldn't have ever expected to go analog again. It just ain't working for me. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have moved from analog. It's all right. All right. It's all good. All right. It's all right. It's all good.
So much for computers.
Got a good idea now. This is only one. So that's the original one. That's 2.2, so it's just back here.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Tim. Thank you. Yes. So. No. We're doing the Weir trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's the wrong page. Here we go.
37, I think. So
That's the one. Yes. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So it is a big recommendation as well, and that's why I wanted to have it up, because it covers nearly 3 pages. So I'm comfortable that everything has been done to minimise the reduction in trees. Now I understand that should this be approved, and correct me if I'm mistaken, that it would only be a notice of decision.
That's correct.
That's right.
Correct. Yep.
This appeal right still exists.
Yep.
Look, to be honest, I'm keen to see that road finished, particularly, we're not any further advanced on funding for Kerwin's Bridge to get that open, and I'd hate to have a terrible, terrible season of flood or fire, which didn't give people a really good access out. And anyway, Weir Road, what we've got most of it done. It's just a bit in the middle, and I think we can't leave the road unfinished. So as much as it's not great to remove trees, there will be offsets. They are required. They will occur. There are conditions here, quite a number of conditions as well, and so the importance of getting this done. I recommend, I resolve that the recommendation on pages 36, 7 and 8 become the resolution and as such is carried. And I look forward to reading in the local papers after I'm gone that it's been finished.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Long as they say loves.
Okay. Moving on to 11.1.3, the process for implementing updated flood controls into Strathbogie's planning scheme. As was raised during the first matter tonight, flood controls or flood information isn't all up to date everywhere, or controls aren't all up to date, but the government, the state government is working with councils to try and get that done. Parliamentary inquiry into the October 2002 floods highlighted the need for appropriate flood mitigation measures to be introduced to protect the community, and part of that is going to be updating council's planning controls. Now, the controls in our, as the report says, the controls in our shire are outdated, and some of the modelling and data underpinning these controls are in excess of 20 years old. So, very important that we basically adopt these controls, give the information to people out there in the community, highlight that information to people in the community, so that one, they can make better decisions about purchasing land, building on land, and to underpin, I guess, to underpin future planning decisions. And part of that will be requesting the minister to prepare a planning scheme amendment to introduce interim controls while the work gets done and the consultation occurs for permanent controls. I'm surprised, and I think we were talking about this before we started, surprised the room isn't full for this one, but this is going to have or the potential for wider impact than that first item, albeit we know how sensitive that previous decision was. But this is necessary work. You know, I suppose a parallel here in the city was the fact that Melbourne Water's controls were based on outdated modelling, and then you had the floods in Maribyrnong, and now people saying, "What did we build here? What are we going to do?" And I think that creates a fair bit of headache for whether you stay, whether you go, what the place is worth, what it's not, and for the cost of insurance and all. But I understand, at least in this municipality, the information that's underpinning the interim controls has been out there in the community for some time. So insurers have already made their assessments based on that information. I understand. Anyway, enough of me rabbiting on about things that I don't know a lot about. But suffice to say that I think it's important that we, that I tonight as council adopt the recommendation that is contained on page 44, 45, 44 and 45, and I look forward to. Sorry.
46.
It is on 46. No.
Oh, sorry.
40, yeah, 44 and 45. So the recommendation becomes a resolution and is carried, and I look forward to, again, reading my copy of the Euroa Gazette into the future as the controls are shored up. Probably be fun.
Your free copy. Make sure I post it to you each week.
That's great. All right, moving on. All right, this is a soft one. Planning applications received and determined. I won't comment too much here, except to say that while working on the glamping application, the team also had 17 new planning applications received and decided on 20 during the period 1 to 31 of July. And they're not a big team, so they continue to churn it out. And the report talks about other parts of the work. And I'll move that the recommendation on page 59 is carried. It becomes a resolution and is carried, and my thanks to the planning team. Okay, strategic. Now we're on to the community stuff. Strategic funding agreements, Rowing Victoria Incorporated and Euroa Show and Shine Incorporated, and here thanks to the community team, because they've got funding agreements with these two organisations, so that they will have their events for extended periods rather than just coming back every year to seek support or not, or have support or not, and having strategic funding agreements in place allows council to plan, council to model and understand what the economic benefit and impact might be over the period, and also gives some surety to those organisations. And just as a corollary or parallel kind of thing, I think I saw on one of the TV news is that the state government has negotiated now, agreed to a 7 more years of the Boxing Day test at the MCG. Now it sounds ridiculous that they have to keep coming back to that, but at the end of the day, if you don't negotiate what, thanks, Braden, if you don't negotiate what each party wants out of these events and who's responsible for what and not, and who pays what, then eventually those events might not be with you anymore. So good work for negotiating these strategic funding agreements. Understand, the numbers are big, and the economic boost based on the information that's been provided or the information from past events says that we get good bang for buck. So, and it somewhat mitigates the issue of organisations having to spend inordinate amounts of time. Well, I will say inordinate amounts of time, but any sort of considerable time in submitting for annual funding. You get a strategic funding agreement done, get the application in once every number of years rather than having to come back every year. So good work there, and I will.
61 to 62.
Thank you. Yes, I will move that, or the recommendation on pages 61 and 62 becomes a resolution. It's a two-part recommendation, becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. Right. Strathbogie Shire Council Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan. And did I ask you to talk on that one before? No, sorry, I didn't get you to give the highlights. I'm not snubbing you.
Been a big meeting.
It has, yes. So Director Frampton, so that I might take a drink, can you give me the highlights to the 11.2.2 Strathbogie Shire Council Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The Strathbogie Shire Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan outlines the key directions and priorities for Strathbogie Shire Council to support economic development and sustained growth for the local economy. The actions and recommendations outlined in the strategy are designed to achieve economic development outcomes and drive economic uplift to the benefit of the community, workers and businesses within the Shire. The strategy was adopted at the council meeting held on the 20th of June 2023, and this report presents the annual progress report to council. Some of the highlights from that period in particular is the progression and establishment of Goulburn Region Tourism Incorporated, the delivery of streetscape plans, the completion of Belmadam Hill Mountain Bike Trail feasibility study, which is also going to be in another agenda item tonight, advocacy on digital infrastructure and power reliability, and a more detailed annual progress report is also attached in the attachment to the agenda. A recommendation is printed on page 69 of the agenda.
Thanks, Director Frampton, and apologies again for missing you before. Happy with this. I'm happy with this report, and there's quite a bit happening in the Shire. It's great, and I'm sure the next council will have even greater plans for the Shire and its economic development. I was going to comment on an article that might appear in the paper tomorrow in the Gazette, but there's a suggestion that Strathbogie is growing 297%.
There's an ABC beta.
Yeah, I thought. Thank you for that, but I thought that's a bit odd.
Fifth in the nation.
Yeah, in growth. Anyway, I just thought I might mention that. But obviously, the economic development team are doing a great job. Anyway, I'll move on. Page 69 of the agenda has a recommendation, and I will move that recommendation becomes a resolution, and that we note the 2023-24 annual progress report for the Strathbogie Shire Council Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan 2023-27. Right now. Okay, moving to.
See ya.
And on behalf of the Show and Shine Committee, appreciate all your support.
See ya. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah. Okay.
That was related to the item.
The events, yeah, Show and Shine, yeah.
Leave the council closed.
Okay. Stay there, but you don't have to comment every minute, though. All right. 11.2.3 event grant applications received. Over to you, Director Frampton, if you'd like to give a highlight.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Building on the theme of economic development and events, Council has received 7 event grant applications for consideration this month. Event grant applications are submitted in line with Council's community funding model that was adopted in April this year. 6 applications are being recommended for funding, and the other application has been withdrawn as it is more suitable for a strategic funding agreement between Council and the Euroa Show and Shine. So that pertains to item 11.2.2 as part of the strategic funding agreement. Our officers have worked diligently with community event organisers to submit their applications this month due to the upcoming restrictions imposed during the council election period. So we do thank all those event organisers for working very hard to submit event grant applications so that it could be considered at this council meeting. The report also does seek council approval for the Chief Executive Officer to award event grants under delegation throughout the election period, provided the grant applications meet the program eligibility and assessment requirements and subject to the available approved budget allocation in the 2024-2025 budget. This is a safety measure just in case there are any event organisers that weren't able to submit their applications for grant funding by this meeting date. There are details of each of the applications recommended for funding throughout the report. I won't go through those, but a 4-part recommendation can be found on page 75 for your consideration this evening.
Thanks, Director Frampton. And I will note that it's a lot of bang for a small amount of buck when you add that money to those from those events to the those with the strategic funding agreements that all managed to come in under within the envelope of the budget, which is great work. And so it looks like we've satisfied every request that met the guidelines. So that's terrific. And yeah, so I'm happy with that, and I will, and certainly happy that the Chief Executive gets has the capacity, should it be necessary, to award those grants during the election period, should they be required. So happy to move that the 4-part recommendation on pages 75 and 76 becomes the resolution, and as such is carried. And moving along now to 11.2.4 Domestic Animal Management Plan 2021-25 Annual Progress Report. Again, Director Frampton, if you'd like to make any, provide any highlights.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The Domestic Animals Act requires Council to prepare a domestic animal management plan every 4 years. At its meeting in December 2021, Council adopted the Domestic Animal Management Plan for 2021 to 25 after significant community consultation. This report provides a progress report against the plan and the key achievements 2023 to 2024. Highlights for the year include the re-establishment of the Strathbogie Animal Shelter and the development of innovative animal registration tools. We are required to provide a copy of our annual report also to the relevant department and authority. A recommendation can be found on page 86 of this agenda for your consideration.
Thanks, Director Frampton. Just a quick question. I know people value their pets, absolutely value their pets, and I tell you what, my wife's cat, I'll call it my wife's cat, she would eat better than me if it was up to my wife to do the cooking. I could tell you that. The cat would eat better than me. But after COVID and during COVID, lots of people got lots of animals. And we've seen since COVID, a lot of people are divesting themselves of animals, and the cost of living impact or cost of living has impacted numbers being surrendered. Now, is that impacting us in terms of the pound and stray animals and so on?
Yeah, certainly. So we obviously, with the re-establishment of our pound, previously we had been rehoming animals through an external provider, through another municipality. And what we've found is it would be a far more cost efficient model if we could actually provide that service ourselves due to the volume and number of surrendered animals and animals found at large. So yes, it certainly is. And part of what we do is also around education to inform people and to help them make good decisions around pet ownership, to try and make sure that people don't need to surrender animals and they are capable of looking after them and within the resources that those people have. So that's part of the role of our rangers too, and our team is to educate around what responsible pet ownership looks like.
Yeah. As I say, most people, and as I talk about my wife, she's one of those, most people love their pets to death and will do anything for them. But there are those, some that now can't afford it, and some that don't care for their pets as much and will just divest themselves of them, and that's an issue. Well, thank you for that, and I'm happy with that report. So that recommendation on page 86 becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. Play an open space strategy, and you had some advice there, Director Frampton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Council developed a draft plan open space strategy. This strategy went out for consultation for the last 6 weeks. Following that consultation, the feedback from this period has been collated and reviewed to inform the development of the update of the strategy. Now, I do wish to inform the administrator that some grammatical and spelling errors were identified in the strategy document that was attached and published with this agenda. These errors have now been corrected and an updated version has been provided to the at tonight's meeting. However, there were no changes of substance made to the document. It was simply formatting and grammar. The draft plain open space strategy has been provided to you, and there is a recommendation on page 91 of tonight's agenda. You will see a summarised version of what the community told us and also a response from council in regards to that. And one point of note was a significant contribution from one community group or member around considering detailed disability access. Whilst disability access was certainly done as part of the technical report, they are recommending that we do a little bit more detailed disability access, and the suggestion is that we do this as part of each place-based renewal, work or upgrade, and that it doesn't impact the actual adoption of a strategy.
Thanks for that, Director. Good evening. Could I ask you?
I guess you can ask your way.
Sitting there.
Yeah, my name's Greg Maybe. You were looking for me.
Yeah. Well, that boat sailed, Greg.
And so I hear.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hang around till I find out how it can sail.
Well,
on a one-man decision.
Well, I have the power.
I gather that.
And I've made the decision.
That's fine. I'll wait and see you then in the meeting.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, you can take a chair. Let's sit down there if you like.
I'll just use the table, but there you go.
Okay. Well, where were we?
So I think
Recommendation on page 91. The council adopt, 2 parts. That recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And thank you for that work. And thank you for that refreshing that document with the typos and so on, because important. All right. Moving on. Balmatin Hill Mountain Bike Trail Feasibility Assessment. Over to you again, Director Frampton. If you could give us some highlights, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Council received state government funding through the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions Investment Fast Track Fund to complete a feasibility assessment for a mountain bike trail on Balmatin Hill at Euroa, following significant community advocacy for this project. In accordance with our procurement process, Stantec, an experienced consulting company with expertise in track and trail development, was engaged to undertake a 2-part feasibility assessment. Stage 1 was an exploratory study into the constraints and opportunities of the site, and Stage 2 was the delivery of a business case in preparation for a shovel-ready project for a future funding bid. The probable costs of the construction of the trail network, according to the civil engineer, and the required amenity is estimated to be $1.5 million. The benefit cost ratio tells us for every $1 spent on the Balmatin Hill mountain bike trail network, we could expect a return of $2.69 for the Strathbogie Shire local government area. Both stages of the feasibility have now been completed, and this report presents the findings from this assessment to Council for noting. A 3-part recommendation can be found on page 98 for your consideration.
Thanks, Director. 98, 97. 97, yeah, that's all right. So I know recommendation 3, part 3, about identifying funding opportunities, but I guess if given the state government's kicked in 240,000 so far, they've got anything left at any point in the future, then one would think that we'd be in a reasonable space of having used that money to get this work done For those who like riding mountain bikes, then that's going to be terrific. And I guess $2.60 odd for every dollar is not a bad return when, when you see some other projects around the place. I'm not talking about here, but other places sometimes get less than $1 back every time. So that's good work. Let's see how the next council goes attracting those funds. So that three-part recommendation on page 97 now becomes a resolution and as such is carried. Moving on to infrastructure. Tender for contract 11.3.1, tender for contract 24/25-07 design and construct base spaces, Strathbogie and Moglen. I knew I'd get it wrong. Moglen, like what she said.
Moglen MB.
Yeah. Been talking too much. Yes, Director Harvey, would you like to give us some highlights, please?
Good evening.
I like to
Chair and
say that.
through
No,
you. I have just as much difficulty with that name too. In September 2023, Council completed an audit of all its playgrounds and open spaces with both the Strathbogie Recreation Reserve and Moglen MB all being identified as requiring upgrades. The construction of the updated spaces will be providing the community with multifunctional and adaptive space that will encourage social interaction and promote health and well-being. The contract that we advertised on the 28th of June 2024 and closed long after that, we received 2 tenders for the design and construction of these play spaces. The idea with this procurement is to actually involve the user groups of the areas in the design. Play spaces can be all sorts of things, and we've just heard from Director Frampton about the interaction of all abilities components and the like, and they can all look like different things, and it's a little bit more difficult nowadays than just putting up some treated pine poles with some ropes and things like that. The community expects many different things, and there are so many options out there with the advent of a lot of these coloured playgrounds and the different materials that we can use now. This report provides an assessment of the tenders that were received and recommends you to consider granting the tender as per the recommendation on page 106.
Thanks for that, Director Harvey. Yep. Yeah, the recommendation is actually 4 parts, pages 106, 107. Yep. Important play spaces. What's the timelines on those being implemented? Should this get up?
They'll be delivered this financial year. What we don't want to do is rush the community consultation component of it, and we want to particularly provide sufficient opportunity to have a number of meetings and use these
community consultants, if you like.
Community consultants, yeah. I mean, these guys aren't just work at Bunnings type of scenario. These guys are fellas that actually are invested in the products that they sell and install, and are keen to provide the community the best that they can for the budgets that they've got. I think obviously we'll have some control over it so that we don't end up with something that's going to have significant cost associated with either maintaining it or replacing it in the future, or in fact have treated pine poles installed as an example to try to cheapen the product to get a bigger bigger scenario. But for the most part, we'll spend a significant period with the designers and the community to make sure that they get something that they consider is unique to their facility and suits the needs of their broader community.
Terrific. Thank you. Again, another one for me to look out for in the Gazette.
Yeah.
All right. So pages 106 and 107, the 4-part recommendation becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. And thanks, Director Harvey. And I'm sure we've got another one for you. Yes. 11.3.2, tender for contract 24/25-02 road reseal program 24/25. Any highlights there?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'd like to highlight that we have prioritised the resealing of our payments and are investing in the order of 30% more this year than previous years to accelerate the refurbishment of our network. This report reviews the 7 tenders that we received through tenders that were advertised and closed in the month of July. We are applying seal to 15 of the council roads that have been prioritised as part of the degradation models and the asset management systems that we've got. And this work packages expand across in excess of 50 kilometres in length. This is an industry that is highly competitive, and we believe we've got quite a good price for this program this year. It is a tender that has done the work for us in previous years. I think they generally, and not generally, they do provide a very good service to the municipality, and the recommendation is there on page 113 for your consideration.
Thanks, Director Harvey. I'm comfortable with the recommendation, and I'm sure people will be quite happy to see those roads when they're resealed, when they're done. The recommendation in 4 parts on page 113 becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. Moving to, yes, tender for contract number 23, oblique 24-74 municipal building services. And this one is Director Frampton. Thank you. Hello, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Council's undertaken a competitive tender process to engage a contract provider for the delivery of municipal building services. This process has been undertaken to ensure best value for the municipal community and to ensure council meets its compliance requirements under the Local Government Act and Strathbogie Shire's procurement policy. A comprehensive evaluation of all submissions was conducted by the evaluation panel, and a summary of the evaluation results is provided in this report. This report recommends that council award the tender to Government Shared Services, or GovSS Pty Ltd, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute the contract accordingly. There is a recommendation printed on page 120.
For the public's benefit, could you just explain what these services are, please?
Yes, so it provides the municipal building surveyors services, which include things like footing inspections and everything under the current Building Regulations Act. So often people will come into contact with our municipal building surveyor when they might be applying for a building permit or for clarification on what can and can't be done in the municipality.
Thanks, Director Frampton. And I'd add, they're few and far between across the sector, and hence, well, there's 2 parts to this. One is that it was, what's the word? Before the amalgamations in the 90s, in the late 80s, I should say, every council had their own building surveyor. It was the the government around the early 90s, I should say, changed the law, and so councils didn't have to have their own building surveyor. You didn't have to go to the council for building surveyors, and private firms popped up everywhere. And so you could either go to your council if they had one, or you could go to the private surveyor. I've had experience with both. I know where I'd prefer. It's council. But there's not a lot of people there's not a lot of people working for councils anymore as building surveyors other than contracted. So there's only a handful. So, which is a bit of a shame, but it sounds like we've got the deal we need for the next 3 years. The recommendation is on page 120. It's a 3-part recommendation, and that recommendation becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. Our contract, major patching program, 24 contract 24. I believe 25-01, major patching program 24-25. Director Harvey, any big highlights here?
No. Other than the fact that this tender is one of the standard suite of contracts that we award every year. We've highlighted a number of our roads, as you were reported to be informing the community last year. This year we've got in a lot earlier than the previous years. I've identified them as a direct consequence of the significant amount of work that we have been doing in major patching after the flooding program and the like. And this is picking up, not the last of them, but definitely the second third of them. There'll be more in future years, and if budget permits, there'll be more perhaps in this financial year as well, through you, Chair. We got some extremely good pricing this year, and that is a real credit to the crew that got these tenders out so early in the year. If you get in first, you get the guys that are really hungry first, and that's what we've got. Says Bollocks Construction Proprietary Limited, who is the recommended tenderer. I know from observations, not just last calendar year, but many years before, is DTP, or what used to be Vic Roads' primary contractor. So we've got a good firm that's given us a great price, and I'm certain that we'll have some great outcomes with this. We are hoping to keep away from Smith Creek, the road that we had all the variations last year, to not experience that type of scenario again. However, who knows? So what we have actually done with this is kept the scope smaller, such that we have got budget allocation just in case, should I need. And I don't have to push budget around quite as much as we did last year. I think so. The recommendation there, after quite an extensive tender evaluation process, is there for you to consider on page 125.
Thanks, Director Harvey. And yes, I'm sure people who use the roads that will be affected here will be quite happy to see those patched as well. So that recommendation in 5 parts on page 125 becomes a resolution. I do note anticipated completion by December 2024 is good. So yeah, it becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. I look forward to those being finished. The next is footpath patching and repair panel, contract 23/24-78. I should have started with 11.3.5, and again, Director Harvey.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And through you, Chair. Council seeking to appoint a panel of suppliers to assist in the management of the condition of its concrete paths within the municipality. The creation of panels as part of the procurement process accelerates the delivery of the program and enables the municipality to be far lighter on its feet in regards to repairing the network, if we have any savings identified within this program, but also to deliver the program that we have scheduled for this year a lot quicker. What it does is it provides for a group of individuals who have been assessed as being like-minded with the municipality, with a good safety record and a good quality record. In particular, those two things, to provide opportunities for them to price individual projects. What it does is circumvent the public advertising process. There's still delegated authorities in which we must award these contracts for within the delegations approved in previous council meetings for the individual contracts for this work, but it enables us to accelerate the work and get it done in the better parts of the year. You'll see there that we've had a reasonable response for quite a number of contractors, some of which are new contractors. Some of the previous contracts tours have chosen to retire and haven't re-advertised. They've all been assessed there, and the recommendation for you to consider is on page 132.
39. Oh, sorry.
132. Sorry.
I'm on that.
Sorry, Chair.
I'm on the next one. No, I moved on. Yeah, patching and repair, and then there's renewal. So I moved on. Yes. So you were right. Yeah. It's a three-part recommendation on that page 132, as you suggested. Happy to move that recommendation becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. And it's good news, as will be the next one. 11.3.6, changes to the Capital Works footpath program. And yeah, it's a brief one, John.
Thank you. Thanks, and through you, Chair. As part of the 24-25 adopted Capital Works program, Council plan to perform new and renewal works on selected paths, and they're actually nominated in the budget papers. The following lists were in those papers: Prentice Street in Nagambie, Anderson Street in Avenel, Lewis Street in Euroa, Queen Street in Avenel, and Hyacinth Street in Violettown. However, due to the poor condition of all of those paths between when the budget was prepared back in November of last year and now, the condition deteriorated to such an extent, and the fact that we had some surplus money as a consequence of some good delivery of the previous year's concrete footpath program, all of these particular projects had either been done that year or previously. Consequently, this paper requests that the following footpaths that have now been identified be actually the work performed on. These ones are again close to or outside of intervention and will require work to be done on them. And that's how they've been prioritised as a direct consequence of the review of those condition reports. And they are Elizabeth Street in Euroa, Railway Street in Euroa, and Clifton Street in Euroa. We ask that you consider the recommendation there on page 139 for your consideration and such that we can work towards getting the ones that require repairs in Euroa there completed.
Thanks, Director Harvey. So yes, I'll move that recommendation on page 139. And the more footpaths, as someone who walks the streets, the more footpaths you can walk on, the better. And the more level footpaths. So renewal's great. So that becomes a resolution that's carried, and moving now on to 11.3.7. Capital program delivery status as at not 30 June 2024. And this is good news, I believe. Director Harvey?
It is good news, Chair, and through you, Chair. I'm pleased to report that as per the reports of the months prior to the end of June. We've actually achieved what was scheduled in that program, and that is the delivery of 92.5% of the projects on time and under budget, under or on budget. We have listed there a number of the projects that are to be carried over. Those projects were notified in those reports very early that they are to be carried over, and a number of those are already out to tender, and so should be considered in due course for construction. The aim this financial year is to actually have zero carryover, and that's what the capital team is putting their shoulders to the grindstone to achieve, so we have no carryover of projects that we've either carried over or in fact are listed as new projects in the 24-25 capital year. And at this stage, we're extremely confident that that will be the case.
Thanks, Director Harvey. And all power to your work in getting 92.5% done at this stage, and noting that some of those other projects are sort of, well, you can't just go and do them. A number of those they require other things to happen, and some of them require big dollars as well. But that's great work, because I don't know there was anything near that 12 months ago. I'd say that. So well done, and look forward to you being able to, or your team, yourself and your team being able to achieve that that goal of 100%, which is, it's a lofty goal, which you've set it. So
we're committed to achieve.
And when you get it, make sure there's an article in the Euroa Gazette, because it's the only way I'll find out about it. Okay. So I'll be reading a lot of Euroa Gazette. The recommendation in 3 parts on page 144 becomes the resolution as such is carried. Moving to contracts, works, variations and grants awarded under delegation, and that's over to you, Director Tingo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple to highlight this evening. So you mentioned earlier about a funding announcement for Avenel and Violet Town libraries. So there were a couple of contracts awarded to be able to support the provision of that service for open libraries with the Goulburn Valley Library Service. So that will obviously increase the operating hours and also improve the securities to support the open libraries. And we also have the provision of the document assembler, which is essentially an agenda management software system that we ideally need to be able to support our agendas for meetings such as this council meeting. There is a recommendation on page 148 of tonight's agenda for your consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Director Tingo. And I understand that that there's been some training around that software, the potential for that software, and that people are very positive about it. So that's good. Again, moving from the analogue to the digital age. Is that right?
Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah. So, okay, I won't dwell on this. Page 148 is a 4-part recommendation in relation to 11.3.8, and I'd move that the recommendation on that page becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. Moving to corporate now, 11.4.1 Council Policy Review Events Policy 2024, and we go over to you again, Director Frampton. Highlights.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, as you're aware, Council plans and manages and supports and delivers a range of events, functions and festivals in Council facilities and also on Council-owned and managed land. The purpose of this policy is to provide the community and Council staff with clarity and an understanding of Council's objectives and approach in regards to the delivery and support of events. The first event policy was adopted by Council in August 2021. The policy then underwent a review again in June 2023 and now another review in July 2024. Several amendments have been made. As you can see, there's an outline of the proposed changes. In particular, we've made some changes around process improvements following community feedback or changes of legislation or process, inclusion of wording around the introduction of the fees and charges and the process to request waiving of fees consistent with the adopted fees and charges 2024-2025, and also an update of information on risk management for events that makes it consistent with Council's current risk policy. It's important to note for any event organisers out there that this policy is supported by the event management framework for the delivery of internal and external events and an associated event toolkit that can actually help and support the community to navigate event organisation. This report presents the updated policy to Council with the proposed changes for consideration and adoption. A recommendation is printed for you on, or is located on page 154 of tonight's agenda for your consideration.
Thanks for that. Those comments, Director Frampton. I move that the recommendation on page 154 becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And moving to 11.4.2 Council Policy Review, updated procurement policy and procedure 2024. And this one, it's over to you, Director Tingay. Some highlights there?
Thank you, Chair, and through you, you may recall back at the July Council meeting last month, Council did adopt the updated procurement policy and procedure in its current form. This report is to bring forward to Council that there was an anomaly located in the actual recent adoption of the procurement policy and procedure. This report seeks Council approval to amend the procurement policy by removing the financial variation amounts identified in section 26 of the policy, as there are actually current and existing powers to authorise contract financial variation contained within the Strathbogie Shire Council instrument of delegation for certain financial transactions and procurement functions. So there is just that one change. All other changes that were included in the July 2024 update remain as is, apart from the change that's put forward tonight to Council to page 26, to section 26, to bring everything in line. There is a recommendation for you commencing on page 160 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Director Tingo. And it does make sense that rather than have several documents stating the same thing, you have it in the highest order policy or highest order document. That way you only have to change one. They can never be inconsistent and that sort of thing. So makes sense. All right. And of course, the instrument of delegation, number one on our level of who can spend what. So, yep. All right. Without further ado, then I will move that recommendation on page 60. 60?
Yep.
Yes, it was 160. Thank you. On page 160 becomes a resolution. That's a two-part resolution. A recommendation becomes a resolution, and as such is carried. 11.4.3 new council policy draft lease and licensing policy 2024, and we're over to you again, Director Frampton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The lease and licensing policy has been necessitated following the introduction of the Local Government Act 2020 and due to the high number of assets Council provide for the benefit of the community for community purposes. Council has previously not had a lease and licensing policy. The draft policy aims to ensure a consistent and equitable and transparent approach is taken to the leasing and licensing of council properties that provide a community benefit and in a manner that complies with legal requirements. The policy relates primarily to a number of property types that are listed in your agenda, including community halls and infrastructure, buildings, sheds, land, kindergartens, early years services, and property for commercial purposes. It's important to note that the draft policy currently does not apply to council's recreation reserves and sporting clubs. Consistent with the recommendations from the 18th of June 2024 Council meeting, the draft lease and licensing policy was released for public exhibition and engagement and open for a period of 4 weeks. All current occupants were invited to contribute and/or attend drop-in sessions. A total of 20 submissions were received, 102 emails were sent, and 30 people attended these sessions. The themes of the drop-in sessions and the submissions received can be found on pages 167 through to 168. I will allow you to read that in your own time in terms of those themes, but they are located there. In addition, there's an attachment which provides an overview of what the community told us and our engagement reach. The draft policy has been reviewed and considered the feedback received, and the draft policy is presented to Council along with some proposed transition measures to support the initial implementation of this policy and reduce the financial burden of establishing new agreements. A recommendation is there on page 165 for you to consider from tonight's agenda.
Thanks, Director Frampton. And I do recall there was some angst when the draft went out, because for a number of organisations it would be very new to them to consider that there might be leases and so on, leases and licences. We are in 2024 and soon to be pretty soon enough be in 2025, and we have to do things well, transparent and with good governance and accountability and those sorts of things. So this policy was necessary, but I do take the point that these interim measures seek to mitigate that. It is fairly new. It will take some adjustment, but I think over time we will get to where, or the council will get where it needs to in terms of level playing fields, where apples and apples contributing in a similar amount and so on. And it's good to get the feedback rather than sit there and accept what was put out there and then later not be happy. They've submitted and we've looked at those submissions and we've made changes as a result. So that's good work and good engagement. With that said, the recommendation on 165 in 4 parts becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And thank you for your work. And moving along to thank you very much for that, Tom. 11.4.4 execution of Master Inland Development Agreement, Inland Rail Proprietary Limited acting or as an agent for the Australian Rail Track Corporation. And over to you, Director Tingay. Highlights.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and through you. This item was previously presented at the February 24th Council meeting. There were a number of things that Council resolved, but one of those was that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to execute the Master Inland Rail Development Agreement with the Australian Rail Track Corporation, which is now known as the Inland Rail Proprietary Limited, acting as an agent on behalf of the Australian Rail Track Corporation, to sign what is affectionately called the MRDA on pending a number of changes to that actual agreement. So those changes were around the removal of any reference to specific return assets or new assets. That would be the responsibility of Council from the agreement until such time as they are negotiated between parties. Removal of any reference of the goods shed until such time as its heritage status is resolved, and then further further recommendations, and as such, if the Chief Executive be satisfied that the document is able to be signed. Then once the document was signed, it is then to be presented to a council meeting for noting, which is the purpose of tonight's meeting. There is a detailed table on page 177 of the agenda outlining the changes that have been made to the Master Inland Rail Development Agreement that are in line with the Council resolution in February 2024. Also, in addition, both parties took the opportunity to further review the document and make any further last-minute changes, so to speak, and they were minor administrative changes, but also references to an overpass have been removed from the document as well, as it is clear that the ARTC are progressing with one option, and that be an underpass. So there is a recommendation for you tonight for your consideration to note the execution of that agreement, and Council continues to work with Inland Rail in relation to the particular assets as the project continues to evolve. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Director Tingo. And I recall, certainly recall that February meeting, and it was important to protect the interests of council and the community at that time, and not have it signed until some of those issues were resolved. And it's good that some good faith discussions have occurred, and the outcome here is far better than would have been. And I understand fruitful discussions are still being had, and as they are being had with community members. So good work all around, and as it's for me, well, it's just a note. I will such note the recommendation on page 179 becoming a resolution, and as such being carried. And thank you for that work. And 11.4.5, future governance of Goulburn Valley Regional Library Corporation, and you're very well qualified to speak about this one, Director Tingo.
Thank you, Chair. So cast your mind back to December 2023, where Council provided in principle support to continue the collaboration for the delivery of library services by Strathbogie Shire Council with the current member councils, that being Greater Shepparton City Council, Moira Shire Council, and of course ourselves. There are changes in the foot in the new Local Government Act 2020 that requires regional library corporations move to alternative governance arrangements by 2030. And the Goulburn Valley Regional Library Corporation has certainly commenced that process. So since December, there has been further work undertaken to understand the transition requirements to the new entity. The Goulburn Valley Libraries Board, which has 2 representatives from each council areas, three representatives from each council area approved to engage Sharrock and Pittman Legal to undertake the legal requirements to transition to the new governance model. There has been commitment and approval from Greater Shepparton City Council and Moira Shire Council in principle to continue with a collaborative approach. However, our recent legal advice has been that both Strathbogie Shire Council and Moira Shire Council make a more definitive commitment to the partnership to progress with this process and down this track. Officers recommend that Council commit to the continued collaboration in the delivery of library services by the current member councils of the Goulburn Valley Regional Library Corporation, and approve the adoption of a not-for-profit company limited by guarantee model as the new governance structure. Also, a review of the member cost contribution will be undertaken as part of the future collaborative governance model agreement as per the resolution also in December 2023. So essentially to continue our work on a shared library service. So the recommendation is on page 183 for your consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Director Tingo. And yeah, the intent intent that I understand has always been, well, since I've been around, it's been to continue with the shared library service, and I note, having been at several meetings, that governance, that work on governance, on the new governance model has progressed, and I understand completely why the recommendation from legal people is that we fully commit. It's nice to have it's nice for people to say, yes, I'm on board, but when you're going to set up a company and you're going to be one of the shareholders, I think it's only fitting that you do commit fully to do that. That doesn't mean that the council's locked in forever, but it allows that process of establishing that company limited by guarantee to occur in a smooth way, and with the members that is intended, or that has suggested that they are going to be members there at the first instance. So I have no issue at all with the recommendation on page 183 in two parts. I thank you for your work on this and on the library. You're at more meetings than I am, so thank you for that. So the recommendation on page 183 becomes the resolution, and as such is carried. And again, I'll be looking post my time here into the reporting from Daz from the GAS. The library is now part of a company limited by guarantee. Okay, to other matters, 11.4.6, council authorisation for the Chief Executive Officer to award contract number 24/25-06 Longwood Football Netball Club change room, and contract number 24/25-19 Longwood Recreation Reserve septic system upgrade. Over to you, please, Director Frampton.
Thank you.
And we did talk about this funding earlier, but anything we might have missed or should highlight at this point.
So thank you, and through you, Chair. The project includes the delivery of a modular change room facility and an upgrade of a septic system. So council is commencing a two-part procurement process to complete the project. The first is a request for tender for the modular facility, which has already gone out to market, and the second is a request for tender for the septic system upgrade, and this is due to go out to market any day. The time frame for the procurement process and decision for the awarding of contracts to a successful tenderer will fall during the council election period. To ensure this project is not delayed by this requirement to seek council's approval to award post a tender evaluation process, this report seeks council's authorisation via resolution for the Chief Executive Officer to award the two contracts in accordance with council's procurement process, and if provided that the total project cost is within the project budget allocation. By providing the Chief Executive Officer this authority to award the works, the project time delay risks due to the election period will be mitigated. This will also assist us in meeting our project timeframes and potentially to deliver the project early on or prior to the commencement of the 2025 football netball season, which would be a great outcome for the community and for the club, which have worked so hard for this facility. A two-part recommendation is on page 195 for your consideration.
Thanks, Director Frampton. And I did mention earlier about being at the announcement for the funding. Mangled the discussion on that, but it was a good event, and you know those people from the footy club and footy and netball club have been pushing, and none more than the president. The president of the footy club, well, the president of the club, gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment. But yeah, that's right. And you know, really pushing for it and really explain how important it is to that small community. Like, not a lot of people live there, but they've got bucket loads of people come and play there. Fantastic. And they did talk about how important it was that it got there for the start of the next season. And I know, having been involved in junior sport myself, if you don't have the facilities there, the kids will go to somewhere where the facilities are, and that club can't afford for their people not to come back. And so for us to say we're going to build it and not get it done on time would be a real blow to them. So I fully endorse this process. There's no risk. There's no risk of the budget of this resolution giving that. It doesn't give the power to the CEO to blow the budget. It just says to award the tenders in a timely way, essentially, in the absence of a council meeting, a council resolution, but has to come back to provide that information to the next ordinary meeting or next available ordinary meeting of the council. So I think it's a pragmatic, it's a good way, good pragmatic step to make sure that this process isn't held up. And again, look forward to hearing about this one getting done on time. So the resolution on page 195 in two parts. I support that. Well, I resolve that the recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. Moving further, 11.4.7, Strathbogie Shire Council Audit Risk Committee appointment of independent community representative. And look, I might just speak briefly on this one. The vacancy came about because of the tragic death of an independent member of the Audit and Risk Committee, Alistair Thompson. We needed to replace Alistair. We've held a recruiting process. The report talks about the advertising process. We got 5 applications. I sat on that panel. We got 5 applications, and every one of those 5 people could have done the job. We interviewed, shortlisted 2 and interviewed those, and the panel recommended John Tanner be appointed to the committee for a period of 3 years. Now, I'll just reiterate that there was a question at the beginning of the meeting about John Tanner, and did he have any links to the organisation or anyone on the panel? Aside from saying hello as a fellow administrator at another council nearby, didn't know him from Adam before I came here, and nobody else did, other than seeing his name in the paper. So there's certainly no link, and I'm very comfortable in resolving that council appoint John Tanner as the independent community representative. I'm sure he'll do a great job. He's got bucket loads of experience. Very, very clever, measured, and affable guy as well. And he'll fit in with that team of people in the audit committee. He brings skills that will enhance what's already there. So happy to resolve that for that recommendation on page 201 to become the resolution, and it is carried. Council plan 6 monthly review 11.4.8. Over to you, Director Tingo. Some highlights, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is our 6 monthly update on the council plan. So that was for the period from 2023 to 30th of June 2024. We've obviously set our 24-25 actions at the June council meeting, but to the 30th of June, for the last reporting period, just a couple of highlights. We've got our fair access policy that was adopted by council in April 2024. We have obviously had some movement on the play and open space strategy. We've got a full calendar of youth leadership events and activities that were delivered across the municipality from January to June. We've participated in the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and World Elder Abuse Day as well. The audit committee's completing their work plan. We've got progress on Balmadam Hill, the rural residential and rural land use, the rural land use and rural residential strategies and urban growth strategy. Obviously, we've seen progress on those strategies. Our what's affectionately known as our CODI project, our digital transformation project across a number of councils, is progressing well. So there's been certainly a number of achievements and also a number of continued actions, some that have moved across into this final year of the council plan. There is a recommendation for your consideration on page 206 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Director Tingay. And yes, a lot's been done. Still some to do. And of course, there's a new plan in the offering next year from a new group of councillors as well. I'll move that the recommendation on page 206 in 2 parts become the resolution as such is carried, and look forward to that. Look forward to looking at the progress in the future. Okay, governance rules, 11.5.1. Again, you, Director Tingay.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This has previously been presented to a council meeting, and also we have had a submission. We've had 2 lots of submission processes undertaken. Our first one, which is detailed in the report, but our most recent one where we had changes to council's election period policy, the governance were required to go back out again for public comment. So they went out in June 2024, which were released again for a further broad community consultation period, just given those changes, as I said, to the election period policy. Following the completion of that community consultation period that went for 28 days, there were no public submissions received. However, officers are proposing a couple of further minor changes to the draft that was released in June 2024. Those being listed on page 213 of the agenda, which basically talks about a number of things, but one of them that in terms of public question time, that's a maximum of 300 characters, updates to the definition of the Chief Executive Officer, and also around social media and website and other digital platforms as the new age keeps evolving. And then also amendments to the annual report, which is section 7 of the election period policy, as well, to update about information that is specifically around how to produce the annual report during the caretaker period to ensure a level playing field for all. And then some further changes at 9.3, which is particularly, once again, around the website and the role of the communications, the executive manager of comms engagement and advocacy around looking at election material and ensuring that that's not contained on our website. So there is a recommendation on page 214 of the agenda to adopt the updated governance rules. As I said, it has been through two rounds of consultation, so to speak, and then also place the governance rules, which does incorporate the election period policy on our website, amongst other things. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Director Tingay. Good work. The governance rules will, often be amended as things come up, things change. But what's really good in this process is that people have a chance to respond and to have their say, and that those suggestions were fully considered, and where they're appropriate, they've been endorsed. And no doubt, this will be the last time these governance rules come before me, but I'm sure the next council will be looking at them again, as they must. Page 214 is the recommendation in 2 parts. I'll move that the recommendation becomes a resolution, and as such is carried, and thank you for your work in the governance team. Okay. monthly performance report. I think,
Mr. Minister, did you move 4.8?
Yes.
Tom, please.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, we did.
That's it.
11.5.2 monthly performance report. I'm going to thank everyone for the work there, and I'm just simply going to move that the recommendation on page 223, that council note that August 2024 monthly performance report becomes a resolution and is carried. And I thank you all for your work, and but I'm not going to comment any more on that because I think it stands for itself. Now, Executive Community Satisfaction Survey 2024. I don't know that. Well, we don't have our executive manager. We do have the interim chief executive, but unless you want to say something, I would simply say that the Community Satisfaction Survey 2024 is probably taken with a little bit of a grain of salt, given that the results are probably coloured by lots of reporting around the council. And all I'd like to say is that I look forward to Gaz from the Gaz reporting next year's Community Satisfaction Survey is up next year. So I will.
Don't go any lower.
So 230 page, the report, sorry, the recommendation is on page 240 in 3 parts. And I'll move that the recommendation becomes a resolution and as such is carried. And yes, we look forward to look forward to next year's report. Now that should be it. The result, look, that's them. So the next meeting, the next monthly meeting, the Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, 17th of September 2024, and we're back at Euroa Community Conference Centre at 6 p.m. So, given there be no further business, the meeting closed at timekeeping 8:41. 8:41.
I'm not going to push the